Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joel Amadon.
And I'm Ann Monroe.
Welcome to The Road to Better Teaching, the podcast where we share stories of professional growth from across the field of education. And we got a late night recording. This is great.
This is the most exciting Road to Better Teaching we've ever had. I mean, it's for us, Joel, it's late. It's like 7 o'clock at night.
Wow. Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm ready to get in my jammies, but we can't because it's an exciting time because we have a legend of Lafayette High School. Anyone that goes to Lafayette High School has had a math class, knows something about our guest, Virge Cornelius. Virge, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, and I guess maybe that's it. Do you like that? I mean, I would say you would think you're a legend. I mean, you are a legend of Lafayette High School.
Here's the thing.
You're a legend beyond Lafayette High School, actually.
I was going to say, I think I'm honestly more famous away from Lafayette High School than in Lafayette High School. There's like a Bible verse about a king is not a king in his own castle. I don't know I can't remember exactly where that's from, but it's like, I'm just like the old lady math teacher at Lafayette, but outside, it's a different story.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what we like on our last episode of the Road to Better Teaching, Dr. Brandy De La Cruz mentioned Virge and all the circuits that you do and the things that you do in AP Calculus. It's like, it's kind of again, very, very much out there about the legend of Virge Cornelius. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Virge, before we kind of get into the countdown, you can just, if you would, properly introduce yourself, tell our listeners who you are and just a bit about the work that you're doing in education right now.
So my name is Virge Cornelius. I teach at Lafayette High School. This is my 26th year at Lafayette High School. It's my 36th year teaching.
Woo!
Yes.
And I grew up in New York City, Manhattan, and I went to school in the Northeast, but we moved down here to Mississippi in 2000 when my husband went to grad school at Ole Miss. And so I have been teaching at Lafayette High School ever since. I'm very well known in the calculus community because I have been involved in the AP Calculus reading since 1999.
Wow. And
that's 26 years, I guess. And then also I was the video person online with Mark Crowley during the pandemic when the College Board had all these live sessions. So Mark and I were online for that. And yes, I do a lot of writing. I write circuits and blog. And Dr. Amadon, Joel, you're the one who kind of pushed me to do those things. So yay, it's been good.
That's right. Hey, but before we get into the teaching stuff, what is something fun, something outside of education about yourself that helps us to get to know you a bit better?
So if I would say something fun about myself, well, I don't know if it's fun. It's fun for me. I love to knit. We have 5 dogs, and I love walking and being outside and going camping and things like that. So those are the kind of things that I could just do for a long, long time.
Virge is going to teach me how to knit.
That's right.
So we've been in discussion, and I'm going to learn how to knit. I did a little crocheting back in the day in the mid 80s. Haven't picked up any of yarn since then, so we'll see what happens.
Well, I think it's important to pass down these historic arts, like knitting or whatever people do. And so I've taught tens and probably over 100 people how to knit. So, Ann, no big deal. You're not going to be a challenge for me at all.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. Okay.
Ann likes to spin a yarn. I know that.
I do like to spin a yarn.
Yes, that's because
I will be good at it.
You're a good Southerner. You know the art of storytelling.
That's right.
That's true.
And also too, do I remember you have do you have that camper that really?
Yes. We have a fiberglass camper.
Mm-hmm. What's it called? What's the brand?
Well, it's called an Escape. It's made in Canada. But before that, we had a Casita. So
that's it. Yeah.
Fiberglass pull behind camper that you can set up camp and then you can go off in your vehicle and go do other things like go to Dollar General because you forgot something.
Absolutely.
They're everywhere now.
They are like
that's
mushrooms.
Right. That's right. Oh, that's awesome. So yes, we like to start our interviews with some laughter, but we also like to start with a little countdown to set the scene. So can you, Virge, name 3 teachers who shaped you as a person?
Yes. So, full disclosure, Joel did send me these questions in advance, so I've had time to think about them. So, the first one's got to be my dad, because he did teach for a couple years, but realized he wasn't going to make any money. So, then he went into advertising. But he was always a teacher for his children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews. Every question that we asked was met with another question. So I grew up in a really kind of Socratic environment. Then I had an incredible math teacher in seventh grade named Kate Flayhive. She was just great, and that was basically a pre-algebra class. And before that, I didn't really like arithmetic. I must admit, I kind of still don't. I'm not good at fractions or whatever, but like algebra, I kind of was starting to get a little bit excited by that. And then a colleague of mine, Kristen Walton, who I taught with in my early years in the 90s at a boarding school in Massachusetts, she and I were very close friends, and we, without being told to do so, we planned together. And so we were doing like a PLC and things like that before it was even a thing. And we planned together, and we just cut our work in half, and we had such a good time, and we shared a classroom in the afternoons when kids would come get extra help. And she's still a great friend of mine to this day. And so a lot of like relationship building with students and things like that I learned from Kristen. Anyway.
Is Kristen still teaching?
Oh, yeah. She's teaching in public school for the first time this year.
All right.
Yeah. She's got Algebra 1 and AP Calculus, just like me. So, Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, that was something that we bonded with, it's almost like the alpha and omega of the school, right? Like teaching that entry level math class, but then also teaching that AP class.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome when you're doing like slopes and derivatives at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you're doing like multiplying polynomials and finding area under a curve. Like it's all the areas, you know?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And like trying to, and then really how you think about your language too, and like how you're consistent, like thinking about, I'm setting up for rate of change, like why that even matters, like from an algebra 1 to a calculus mindset. Also too is like interesting, like that you were doing things, before they were named, but just how like it logically made sense. Hey, why wouldn't I work with somebody else who's teaching the same class that we can cut down our prep, probably have a few laughs and enjoy each other's company at the same time, and then do a better job for our students? And like why wouldn't that be a good thing to do?
Teachers, I think, are very territorial, a lot of them, and they're very they're nervous about showing what they do. I mean, it's basically them and the students all day long, and occasionally an administrator. So they don't. They're kind of they tend to be proprietary and territorial, but I've never worked in a department like that. I've always tried to fan out and have our departments be, very giving, and sharing and stuff like that. So, and I think it's Kristen's influence, honestly, as I thought about it, because she was very much so. She is like that. And she's in a place right now where everybody's like their little fiefdoms, and it's hard for her.
Yeah.
So she's got to break through. You have to understand the culture of a school before you can really make a difference teaching there, and it can take as many as 3 to 5 years. So,
well, that was a cool thing about that. You and Morgan Trevathan back in the day let me come and just hang out in your class, and that I think is part of the culture that you had created. Like, yeah, of course, like there's a desk right there. Come on, just have a seat. Like come join us.
Yeah, I feel like I want anybody in my classroom all the time. Like, it doesn't matter to me. You don't need an invitation. The only problem is you might show up and we're doing a quiz or something, which might not be very interesting. But, so.
What about 2 reasons or events that led you to become a teacher?
So when I was in high school, I thought I would be a doctor. I took AP, that's what smart kids do, right? Then I took AP biology, hated it. And I realized I never really liked science. I was actually a language person. I loved French and I loved math. And so I went to college, and I kind of thought, well, maybe I'd do finance or something like that. And no, I ended up being a camp counselor when I was about 19 years old, and I absolutely fell in love with that. I fell in love with the whole outdoors. I mean, I'm a New York City girl. I fell in love with the whole outdoors, I fell in love with, having my campers and taking them to their, shuttling them around and encouraging them and all that kind of stuff. And I knew from that moment up at Wolfboro Camp School that I was going to be a teacher.
And didn't you go back to that camp year after
Yes,
year after
I
year?
met my husband there the following summer, and we still go back there every summer. And I've pretty much done everything there is at that camp, like teaching and being a counselor and working in the office. And my husband has too. So anyway, we love it there.
Yeah, I remember that story, Verge, because my parents also met as camp counselors and in the summer, and they would drag us back up to the camp every year in the summer and, show us all the places and all that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, and we're really fortunate because our own children have been able to experience it, like not just from visiting, but actually like living there and working there. So they've both worked maintenance there. They've both worked in the kitchen there. So we've been
That's
really, really
awesome.
fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrific.
So I don't think, honestly, Joel, there's two events. It's just the one. That was seminal for me.
That's it. I mean, it isn't like having that exposure to that. I mean, it's a job, right? I mean, well, as a camp, but then job, but like seeing like how, like that, those experiences, like just like it's almost like trying on an identity and like, whoa, I really like working with kids. I really like this. This idea of like pouring into them a little bit. Like, I don't know, similar. I think that was one of mine back in the day when we first started this podcast. Like when I worked at Boise State, it was going back and doing that. That was something that, man, I really found a lot of joy when I was going through my, I don't know, 6 or 7 majors, whatever it is. It took me to finally graduate. So,
Well, I was a math major. I was not an ed major. So I was a math major and I was also an art history major. So that's another thing is a lot of times people have a incorrect perception that math people are kind of like, the pocket protector and all that kind of stuff. Math people are very creative, if there is such a thing as a math person. But I get to go to the AP reading every year. I'm surrounded by these incredibly creative people who are musicians and artists and fiber artists and like they're woodworkers. I mean, and the origami that they create and just they're so creative. And so that was a little disconnect for me. I can't possibly be a math person. I'm too creative for that, But actually, there's actually a mathematician at Cornell who like studies knitting and math. So like that's a thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
that's cool.
There's a lot of math and knitting, as you
I was
can
going to say,
imagine.
there's definitely connections there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what about, so now we're talking, the whole reason for the podcast is talking about these mile markers of professional growth. So what's one mile marker on your journey of growing as an educator? What moment would you pick to represent this mile marker?
So when I thought about that, I thought about when I got the opportunity to become an AP calculus reader in 1999. And I was just a reader, just a little cog in the wheel, like just reading the exams. I was not a table leader, question leader, exam leader, anything like that. But that completely transformed really the direction that I went in because, of course, I was already teaching AP Calculus, but now I kind of had a much better understanding of the kinds of things to emphasize for students. And then as I went back year after year, I got to know other teachers. And again, talk about a PLC. It was like you're standing in line for lunch and everybody's talking about pedagogy and math and it's like all over all the time. Like it's amazing. So, and then I got the opportunity to be a table leader, and then I was on a question team, and then I was up on stage briefing readers on questions, and it was just like, just growing, and then bringing all that back to my students and to my colleagues. So that opportunity was huge, and I've just been able to grow a lot through that.
Birch, for people who might not be familiar with that process, this happens in the summer, is that correct? And
Yes,
how long are you all together, and where do you gather, and that type of thing?
So it's in June every year, and there's 2 different time periods. Calculus has been reading in what we call reading session 2, so it's like more like mid-June. If you're a reader, you go for about a week, and you just grade papers. It's kind of like being a factory worker. You clock in, clock out, and it's actually kind of nice. You don't have to plan lessons or grade you're grading papers, but there's no emotional attachment to it, or like, you're just trying to be accurate and consistent, and you don't know any students' names or anything like that. But there's lots of AP courses like, AP French and AP English and AP Computer Science. And so they're all getting read all over the country in different cities. We've been reading in Kansas City, but because of the World Cup, we're moving to Louisville this summer.
Okay.
But they read all over the country. And then there's also virtual readers now since the pandemic. There's a good chunk of us that read online. So it's changed a lot since the pandemic. But if you're in leadership, you're there about 2 weeks because there's all the standard setting. And that's another thing that it really helped me with is like when I'm grading my Algebra 1 papers, I'm really careful to assign points for what I'm trying to assess. Not necessarily prior knowledge or whatever. Like it's just, I became a much better writer of items to assess my students to make sure that they're learning the stuff they're supposed to be learning. Because when you're in that grading atmosphere and you're learning about the scoring rubrics and stuff like that. But that's not to say that anybody can't do that, because anybody can apply to be a reader. And then also you can, if you're teaching an AP course, you can go to a summer institute with an experienced teacher who's leading it and learn a lot before you teach your AP course. Advanced placement, that's what AP stands for.
So I would assume that with being involved in this grading process, it must help your students in their AP classes.
Yeah,
Big
but
time.
it's bigger than that, because it helps me be a better teacher for my algebra students. And I just started teaching AP stats. And then also I'm a department chair. So I've got all my teachers there who I'm trying to help and mentor. And then we've got, of course, our online communities on Facebook where we're giving advice and all this other kind of stuff. And I mean, like it's bigger than just my students. But yes, my own students are direct beneficiaries, but they're kind of like your own children. They don't get it. They don't really understand who's in front of them, and that's fine. I'm just their teacher, and that's fine. I don't need to be anything other than that.
Yeah, they're arguing their score on some test, and like, I kind of know how to grade these things. A little bit.
No, a lot of times I'll be like, I was gentle to you. You probably wouldn't have got the point.
Well, I want to ask Virge, like, how did that start? Like, how did like did you get did someone tap you and say, hey, I think you should do this? Like go towards being a leader, apply? Like, how did that, because I think that's where some people are sitting there like, wow, Virge had a great professional development opportunity and that has like changed her career, like her trajectory. Like you picked any moment, you picked that one. But like, how do those things start versus, I'm just curious.
You have to apply to be an AP reader, and you have to have read for at least, well, back in my day, it was probably like you had to read for 3 years. And I kind of knew that because I had taken AP classes when I was in high school. And I knew that these exams were graded by people. The multiple choice is graded by a computer, but somebody's reading these free responses. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that. And I knew that there must be a way to be an AP reader. And I mean, back in those days when I applied, that was in the beginning of the internet. So I probably just looked online, and I probably honestly downloaded a paper application and filled it out and mailed it in. I know I did because I got a letter in the mail saying I had been accepted to be an AP reader. And I remember walking down the hill. I was teaching at a boarding school in Massachusetts at the time, walking down the hill, shaking as I was opening the letter, like a college acceptance or something like that. And I was going to be an AP reader, and I was going to go to Colorado State. At those times, we read on college campuses, which I much prefer. But anyway, and it was going to be in June, and I was like going to get paid like $900 for 7 days. And I was so happy, like it was going to be amazing. I didn't even care about the money. I would have done it for free, So, but I think the important thing too is like to take advantage of those opportunities. And when you're there, don't stay in your room. Go out and meet people. If they say we're going to go out and have hamburgers, and you're like, okay, I'll go, like that kind of thing, especially because you don't have any responsibilities when you're young. You don't have any kids or whatever. So like meet people, talk to people on the lunch line, Yeah.
Yeah, put yourself out there and try something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was first started teaching, we taught with, it was called the Core Plus curriculum, a connected math and context, but Core Plus for sure. But we had in free professional development, because this was one of those NSF funded curricula. So we went to Iowa, the University of Iowa's campus, and people from all over the country that were doing this curriculum would come, and we'd be there for a week just doing math and learning about best
So much
practices
fun.
and things. Oh my gosh, it was so, like, because like it was a different style of teaching than I was used to, and it was like, how do you handle this, like getting them to interact in group? Well, regardless, it was just like same thing. It was like, wow, I got to meet a lot of cool people that knew how to teach, or even two that wrote the curriculum and stuff. It was like, holy cow, like why not take advantage of those opportunities?
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I think too, Verge, with you saying that, it's something that when I talk to college students, I say this, but I never thought about it necessarily applying to new teachers, once folks leave college and go. But I tease and I say, don't follow Nancy Reagan's just say no. I say, just say yes. Anything that someone asks you to do or any opportunity, just say yes. And you never know where it's going to lead. You're going to learn something, just say yes while you can. And then, but you bringing it to this idea about being a young teacher and being, college is over with, but you're not done growing, right?
Oh,
You're a young
gosh, no.
teacher. Just say yes, just continue to say yes. And when Joel and I started this podcast, we were each other's first guest. So there's a podcast for Joel's story and the podcast with my story.
You need to send me those links.
Yes, and you can get them wherever you get your podcast. But and Joel, you remember this? But
oh yeah,
me saying yes to that first professional development that I was invited to go see Dinah Zeich, and I didn't know who this was, and I didn't know anything about it, and I had just been teaching like 2 weeks, and I had to go ask my principal to have a professional leave day, and I was like, "Can I do that? Like, how does this work?" And I was just pushed to do it. And because normally I would, oh no, I think I'll just pass, but I said yes. And I'm still, it's something that's completely, I've been using and teaching and sharing with other teachers for, 30 plus years. So just by saying yes.
Yeah. And I think too, like,
great lesson.
I think new teachers, everything is so new that they're just growing like crazy in those first 3 years anyway. But I think as you become a more mature teacher, you have to take on new things to stay fresh. So say yes to stay fresh too. It's not just for the young teachers. For me, like that's why I started teaching AP statistics 4 years ago. I was like, I need to do something else. I need to do something hard. So like I did, and a lot of times I'd be like, what the heck was I getting myself into? But it is the best course, and it is for everyone. It really is. It's a great class. So anyway, I can talk more about that one later. But
well, and it's so we talk about like what might represent. If you had a souvenir to represent, would it be your letter? I'm just curious. Would it be the letter to represent your moment?
From that time period?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I even had it, but I don't know that I still have it. But, well, to go forward with that, Joel, because you know about my circuits.
Yeah.
There's a teacher named Nancy Stevenson, who's a Houston, Texas area teacher, who was she was on the development committee back in the 80s or 90s for calculus. And she was, she'd never been a question leader. She's kind of always was on the question team, and just an incredible, incredible teacher, a lot of patience. And, we would always be talking about like, what do you do with your kids for review? What do you do? What do you do? And she said, oh, well, I have these circuits. And she sent me a couple of circuits. I said, I want those. She sent me a couple of calculus circuits that were basically review, like you would have a review worksheet, but put into a circuit form.
And say more about what that is, or whenever you want to.
Sure. So a mathematical circuit is kind of like a circuit at the gym where you start doing one exercise, and then you switch. As soon as you finish that exercise, you get your answer, you search for the answer, and that becomes your next problem. You work that problem. you search for your answer, and then you just continue in that way until you finish the circuit. So there's a couple things that could happen. You could finish the circuit and you could have empty boxes left because they're all these cells, like maybe 8 or 10 or 16 problems. And then you know you made a mistake. Then you've got to, go back and reconcile all that. Or you might get stuck. You do the problem and you can't find your answer. You got -5, but there's no -5. Then you know you need to ask a question, or you just don't even know how to get started. So it really, I wish you had been in my classroom today because we were doing a circuit on multiple different kinds of regression in Algebra 1 and using Desmos and everything. I didn't have to do anything. I was just walking around and they were all just chattering away because they were all able to advance on their own for a long time until they got stuck. And it's just incredible. Anyway, Nancy is somebody I met at the AP reading, and she's the first person I saw with a mathematical circuit. And then Joel, when we were having our coaching, which by the way, I remembered this quote, Joel said, "I'd like to coach you and Morgan. I'm going to write a grant for it." Morgan was a brand new-ish teacher, and I was kind of a crusty old teacher at that point. I had been teaching that was like 2013 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I had been teaching for almost 25 years at that point. And I was like, I don't need a coach. And you said, even Tiger Woods has a coach. And I
that's
said,
a good quote. Hey,
that's a good job, Joel.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, he's right. He's right. Maybe there's something. And that goes back to saying yes, right? And okay, yeah, fine, coach me. And I think that Joel, you are the circuit doula is what you are.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to use that.
The circuit doula.
I mean,
love it.
The beauty
I'm
of Joel
that down right now.
Joel, the beauty of you as a person is that you really are able to bring out the best in people of things that they might not even know and that they have inside themselves. And also my blog, you really encouraged me to do a blog. You and a couple of other people, but because we were doing that grant, it was a perfect timing for that. But the circuits, you said to me, oh, well, you're using these for review. I had written some for my Algebra 1 students and some for my calculus students as review on the Nancy Stevenson model. He said, well, you could do this for just one topic. I said, no, you can't. You said, yes, you can. And that's when I really started writing, because I would take a topic, factoring a basic trinomial, 16 questions, and basically game it where the first 4 questions are pretty easy, gentle, and then they level up, and then they level up, and then they level up. So your struggling learners, they're engaged the whole time. And even if they only get 8 or 10 out of 16 done, they've had a great workout.
Yeah.
And I think about that when I go to the gym. I'm not lifting 300 pounds, but I'm doing what's right for me, And so we all need to be working to our potential during that time period, So it's good for that.
Well, and even
I would think also sorry, Joel. I would think also the circuits, like you're saying, people work to their potential, but there's also opportunity depending on the day or the topic where a kid who they might be able to go further than you would have expected.
Oh yeah.
And the circuit gives that, lane to do that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that it's very natural and organic for students to become teachers. So in that format, I answer Savannah's question, then another kid, I'm walking around, another kid's like, da, 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 da. I go, no, I already answered that for Savannah. You're going to have to go talk to Savannah.
I love that.
And then they oh, come over, see me. And they love that. And that slows them down too, because they're kind of fast and I know they're going to finish too fast. So now I can find out who my little teachers are in my room,
And then you'll send them to us.
Yeah.
That's right. I tell them all the time, you never know. You might really want to be a teacher. We need good teachers. I'm preaching that all the time in my classroom.
Oh, we love it.
Well, and some of the brilliance that you have within that, with the scaffolding, with, hey, the answer's there, it's somewhere. If it's not, then okay, there's something there. But then also too, just the fact that you are going jumping around. It's not like, hey, I only got halfway done. Like, no, I'm jumping all over this paper. There's just a little psychology there too. It's like I'm making progress. Like I'm going all over. Maybe I didn't finish it, but I also know that these are harder too. Like some of them are a little bit, trickier like things. And I got a chance to have a great conversation about a topic because, this other person did get it and I didn't get that. And now I get, and so I'm better. And I don't know, there was just so much. And then seeing how other people have taken up your work too, like how people like chop up the circuit, put it around the room to get
Or
people.
they write their own.
Or they write their own. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like you're passing along too. So
Yeah.
it's cool to, like, because it's more than just with Brandy on the last episode where I've interacted with somebody like, and your name came up like, oh, Virge Cornelius, the circuits? And like it's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's another thing about the circuits, because a lot of people say, well, are you worried that like people are going to write circuits and then they won't want to have your circuits? I'm like, no, because John Grisham is the legal thriller expert and I'm the circuit expert. Like my circuits are really good because they also get at the common misconceptions that kids have. And so it's not just 20 problems. Like anyone can just put together something with 20 problems, but you have to have been teaching for a long time and have like really understand where students have misconceptions and where they get confused and build that in. And that's really important because then they're teaching themselves. They're getting stuck and they're getting unstuck, and that's super important.
Oh, so I'll bring in Ann here because Ann, we talk about mitigating shame in the classroom and talk about using learning trajectories. I mean, that's what Virge is talking about, this idea of like, how does a concept develop and the things that are where misconceptions can happen.
Yeah, she's putting in her knowledge of trajectories into the circuits.
Absolutely.
Right, which is why people, when they see me in person or they email me or they message me or whatever, teachers, they'll say, I love your circuits. Like there's the conversation in my classroom is like unparalleled. And so I know it's a great feeling that like you're helping so many students and teachers out there,
That's awesome.
And we will put a link in the show notes to where folks can come get those circuits too.
Yeah. And there's a ton of free ones. So they should try them out with their students. And if they like them, they can buy them. If they're not right for their students, they can write their own, like it's just a format I've had a lot of fun with.
Yeah. So we talk about having like a pocket-sized teaching philosophy that you can carry with you, a phrase or statement that you can carry with you. Do you have what would be Virge Cornelius's pocket-sized philosophy statement?
So one of my mantras lately has been do all the problems. So this is my philosophy for any math teacher. Like you cannot be an effective math teacher if you don't do all of the problems that you're asking your students to do and then some. I don't know that that's a philosophy, but that's definitely like a small hill I would die on at this point, because I'll get emails also from teachers who say, I'm going to be out and I'd like an answer key for that circuit. And I'm like, I don't provide answer keys. Like the buck stops here.
Yeah.
All the answers are in the circuit. I'm happy to look at your circuit if you have a mistake, because I get mistakes in my own circuit. I do not keep answer keys. So like you have got to do the problems. And I have to have a shout out to my own child, Hi, who is teaching math at a boarding school in Maryland, an Episcopal boarding school called St. James School. And it has been the most wonderful semester because he is teaching Algebra 2 and geometry. And he sends me his tests, wants feedback on them, asks me questions about classroom management, all this kind of stuff. But last night, I got a text and a phone call from him in the middle of dinner because he had a very important math question to talk about. I'm like, oh my gosh, my child has actually called me because I didn't answer his text in 1 minute. So I called him back, and it was pretty clear that we had to be on Zoom together because I'm not going to name the curriculum, but the curriculum that they have, they're factoring in Algebra 2, and the curriculum little videos are showing a trick. And he couldn't figure out, Hi couldn't figure out where the GCF was going. It was getting divided away. And anyway, I mean, obviously
That's
he knows how
greatest
to,
common factor, Ann, just to make sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I know that. Yes.
Okay. Just
Obviously,
checking.
he knows how to factor. I mean, the kid was a computer science major and
Yeah, yeah.
and a math minor and an art minor, I might add.
Oh, I love it.
I know. And, but anyway, like we had this wonderful half-hour conversation because he was doing all the problems in anticipation for where the kid's going to be confused tomorrow. You know, teaching factoring is not easy. And so anyway, it was just awesome. And I was so proud of him because he was taking that initiative on his own. He wasn't just going to go in there and work the problems on the board because he knew how to do them. He wanted to make sure he could explain them and everything. That's kind of like my little mantra right now. But my philosophy, I think, is one word, and it's believe. And I think as a teacher, you have to believe that your students can do it. And I think as a student, you have to believe that you can do it. So I'm a huge Star Wars fan. You know, Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try. So that means that you're not trying. You're believing that you can do it. So I think believing, and as teachers, especially with our struggling students, they don't have any confidence, right? They are struggling. But I believe that they can pass the Algebra State test. I really do. Like, I can teach them enough that they can get that passing score by maybe just the bare minimum, you know, but like I know they can do it. So then I don't have a lot of time to convince them. But that's my objective. I got to convince them that they can do it. They have to believe in themselves. If I had a whole classroom of kids who believed in themselves, would have zero work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest job usually is you got to do all the problems, but you also got to believe that your students can do it.
I think that's amazing. I was just talking to Joel this semester about pocket-sized philosophies, and who was it? Brianna Hall, Joel, that had her three, or I can't. Maybe it was Emily that had told me that you said it needs to be like 4 words or less.
Well, that's why I picked one word, believe.
Yeah, I love that. And she had a 3-word philosophy, and we were getting ready to talk to our class. She's working with me. I think it was Emily Reese, and she was. Went to the class, and we were going to have them work on their pocket-sized philosophies. And so we challenged them: could they get 4 words or less? And I will tell you that they were the best pocket-sized philosophies so far in all the years we've been doing this, because of the really what Joel always tries to get us to do is condense it to the smallest, the essence of what you want to say, that you can just remember it. And I love that. You've got it, Virge, you win. You have it down to 1 word. I love it.
Well, I mean, if you don't remember it, then you can't use it, right? I mean, that's the whole point of it, is like, like, and then also too, do you see it in what you're doing, in your actions and things? And like, obviously, Virge, you're seeing that in your actions and what you're doing with your kids, and actually having them doing something that's pretty hard. Like, I mean, having them, you're thinking about not only the algebra state test, but then thinking about taking AP tests and taking AP Calc, where it's not just your teacher, it's somebody else that you don't know is going to be reading and scoring and putting it, like, man, they have to have some belief in that when they enter that room, that they can do it. And think of all the things, all the structures that you do a good job on social media putting it out there, like where kids are showing up early and kids are, doing the extra work because of belief, probably. I mean, like, they're not going to show up if they don't believe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also cool too, like all the kids that come back to visit you, like that's
the best part about being a teacher. That's why if you're a young teacher, you need to stick with it, because you can't even believe, well, here goes believe again, but like the amount of joy to see your students actually being functioning, contributing members of society. And to teach alongside a former student is next level. You know, whether it's in your department or in your school or in your district, like I teach across the hall from a former student, former Algebra 1 and AP Calculus student of mine, just right across the hall. And it's just such a joy, you know? So it's great.
That is great.
That's wonderful.
So now is the time when we do a little resource dump, like trying to think like what are some things that we can connect to. One thing that I wanted to mention is when we did our coaching then back in 2013, one is these MET grants. That's the grant that we applied for, and they just came due November 1st, but they're also in May as well. And there's all sorts of different grants that people can apply for. Ones are where a university person and a school K-12 person can work together on something, any sort of research, and we did some presentations. We got out there, so that's good. But I'll put a link to those opportunities. Also, you chose a book. Do you remember the book that you chose? Because I
chose a book, and I can't remember the title, but it was
by
about
Liping Ma.
Yes, and this was an excellent book for me, because what she did was she went into I believe it was a Chinese classroom and also an American classroom. And she was watching teachers teach multiplication, where multiplication of 620 times 179 or something like that, where students, in the way I learned it, the way the two of you probably learned it, where you do your first one and then you do your next one, but you scoot it over, I actually put a 0 there. I was taught to put a 0 there, but some people just would scoot it over. And then the third line, you scoot it over 2 times. They don't even know that it's because you're multiplying by something in the tens or something in the hundreds. Right. Whereas in China, they really understand. And a lot of what happens between China and the U.S. in terms of math acquisition is cultural, obviously. In China, my understanding is that if you aren't doing well in math, it's because you're not working hard enough. Like, it's attached to laziness. Whereas in this country, if you're not doing well in math, it's attached to genetics, and that's terrible. But in any case, in China, the language itself lends itself to doing math. English is a very challenging language. Chinese and their work with the abacus and base 10 and things like that at a young age just helps them to have much better number sense than a lot of our students. That's a huge difference. And then so the teachers teaching in the U.S. don't really know what's going on when they're moving the number over. Mm-hmm. So I loved the fact that Gray learned how to multiply big numbers like that using the area model. Mm. And now we don't FOIL anymore at Lafayette. We use a Punnett square to multiply polynomials in Algebra 1. Yay, it's so much better. I'm sorry for all those students who had taught to FOIL, but, that's the way I learned it. And that's what happens. You just teach it the way you learned it, So I loved that book. What was put that in the.
Yeah, I will. It's by Liping Ma, but I can't. But it has a very, very straightforward title. But it's a classic math ed book where it compared those two. But yeah,
and it's so research based too. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and this whole idea about number sense, which of course originally was not something we were thinking of, but we have definitely moved in that direction. And I don't know, you all tell me, but didn't it, to some extent, start with everyday math or with what was coming out of Chicago back?
Yeah. Guess what?
Yeah.
From Virge, you would Zalman Usiskin.
You're talking the University of Chicago mathematics?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just saw Zal Usiskin at NCTM. Mm-hmm. He sat across from me at a couch, and I'm like, kind of like my jaw kind of good because I saw his name tag, and I'm like, I've read papers from him. I heard about when he did everyday mathematics. It was kind of almost on a dare. It was oh, you can't do a curriculum based off the 89 standards. Let's try, they did so it's like a bet. And then they did it, and it was it won't sell. And it was one of the most popular curriculum for a long time. But it was all about building sense making, not only for the students, but also for the teachers. So I was kind of starstruck. I'm like,
those
wow.
Those books. Go
Yeah, go
ahead.
ahead, Verge. Go ahead,
Well,
Verge.
I taught Algebra 2 my first year teaching out of those textbooks and or maybe my second year teaching. And I loved those textbooks. To me it was like how I thought about math anyway, going back to my dad. Like I just was always understanding part to whole and everything because of my environment that I grew up in, and those books really brought it to life. The knock on those books, and this was true with the Hughes Hallett calculus book as well, out of Harvard in the 90s. There just wasn't enough practice in the book. Like you get to the lesson, it's like, okay, do these 7 problems for homework. You know, that's not enough. Like they have to do more than that. So I think future editions included way more practice, but I loved the how it was laid out in terms of the teaching of it. I did love that.
Yeah, my third year teaching, we adopted everyday math. And I taught, we had a Basel, I don't know whose it was, the first couple of years. And then after that, we had everyday math. And I literally saw a difference immediately. It was certainly an adjustment for the teachers, because we did not grow up doing everyday mathematics.
Yeah.
And it was an adjustment, but it was so eye-opening, just to see how much my students understood what they were doing,
Yeah.
and they literally knew what they were doing. And then to see my son, years later, as he went through, school, really having a strong number sense. He really knew what was happening. He just mastering things that I had, when I was going through school, had no idea what I was doing, or, why those zeros. And I too was taught to put the zeros there, and, just doing something by repeating
Right.
what someone else was doing on the board and not really understanding why. But that there was an article, I think it was an article called "It Came from Chicago" a long time ago, back in the late 1990s, that kind of gave the history about everyday mathematics and that whole start.
I could see if I could find something we can back in the late 1900s. That's good.
That's right. Yes.
Anything else? Any other things that this is? I mean, and also too, just to put a pin in this, with like the importance of good stuff, right? And you talk about circuits, you're talking about good curriculum, like having good stuff and the potential that leads to for what can happen in the classroom is just really important, I think.
Yeah, I think high quality instructional materials is important. You only have a small amount of time with your students, and you want them working on, things that will engender conversation, that will push their understanding to another level, things that will challenge them, give them productive struggle. You don't want them to shut down, with a task that's overwhelming, but something that's another thing about the circuits is they're kind of like bite size. So you can just kind of do this small bit. You don't have to do this whole task. I'll tell you, in terms of another thing you might put in, when I started teaching AP Stats, I got connected with, because I reached out to these folks, the Math Medics up in Michigan, and they have something called EFFL, EFFL, which is experience first, formalize later. And so that's how I teach AP Stats. The front page of the notes is an activity. Then the back page, I call it the little box of notes, where we put in there, like today we were doing the power of a test. So we're doing significance testing, and we've got the power of a test versus the type 2 error versus the type 1 error, et cetera, like all those little rules that you got to put up in there and how everything's connected. And then there's a check your understanding underneath that. And that's your notes for 40, 45 minutes. And all of their stuff is free on their website. And they have all the way down to Algebra 1. So it's fantastic, their model. And they were at NCTM too. I was not, but they always go to MCTM. Luke Wilcox and
Nice.
and his whole crew, Sarah Stetcher and Lindsay Gallus, and they're incredible.
Nice.
So
we'll find them out and put a link. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's the thing that we challenge, like that whole idea of the I do, we do, you do, breaking away from, and like having that, like trying to say, like, let them try it. them try that experience for it. Let them get into it a little bit, and then we'll talk about what it is. Like let them, kind of like the being like when I was first in the curriculum we taught, like you experience trig ratios by measuring and seeing like, whoa, those all keep coming out the same for this angle. Like,
I love that.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like, yeah. And versus like their parents probably just like, hey, here's this table in the back of your textbook that tells you what these like.
Hey, I had tables.
Well,
I'm older than both of you.
But like, why is that decimal there? Oh, because
It's always the same
it's
ratio.
always the same, which is
Yeah.
like no one, and like if you don't do that, you're never like, oh my gosh, it's always the same, right? Or
Well,
like
you can do that with circles too, where you measure
Exactly.
the diameter and the circumference. We could talk all night about this stuff. I had my son do that during the pandemic. We found a bunch of circles and I gave him rope and he had to like put the circle around the paint can, or, he had to find and then he had to put it around the middle and he had a little list, right? And then he had to divide them out on the calculator and they all came up to like 3.14 or something like that.
like kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And just like to be, like the beauty of that, right? And so, and there we get back to the creativity and the beauty. Like there's something there with like those sorts of beautiful problems and things that get you to see like these things that are in mathematics. So
All around us.
all around us. Anything else that you want to suggest? Like again, we'll put a link to your blog and your circuits, and anything else that you had to promote out there, or applying to be a reader for the AP.
Applying to be a reader. I think that's good. I love like reading, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Math with Bad Drawings or
Yes, I have
anything
that.
by Steven Strogatz.
Yeah.
I love anything by Steven Strogatz or Math with Bad Drawings. I like to, when I'm reading about math, I like to have fun with it. I don't tend to read like the real heavy stuff,
Yeah.
So anyway.
That's good. That's good. All right. A huge thank you to Verge. Virge Cornelius, for sharing a mile marker on their road to better teaching.
And a big thanks to everyone joining us. Remember, the road to better teaching goes on forever, and the joy of learning never ends. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Rate and review the podcast. It really helps us find stories out there, and share it with a colleague or friend who's on their own journey in education.
You can find today's show notes and all the links we mentioned at roadtobetterteaching.com. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to each of you traveling this journey of becoming and growing as an educator. The world is a better place because you are sharing the gifts you've been giving to teach others.